Welcome to Old Classic Car, and here, vintage and classic cars all finished in varying shades of green. And to begin with, we have X984ATE, a lovely little Rover Mini spotted attending a classic lorry run a couple of years ago. This one's currently sawn and the MOT has expired. The car dates to 2000, but where is it now? Is it off the road and undergoing a bit of work, or is it just off the road for the winter? Let me know if you know the answer to that one, please. Next up, we've got one of Cyril's photos. He sent this over a little while ago, RTW231. Very smart looking Morris Oxford MO. A nice pale green shade, quite an unusual colour there. It's one of the revised cars without the pointy corners at the front edges of the bonnet, which were guaranteed to stab you in the head if you were working on the engine. Now, a lineup of Fiat 500s here. And we've got a couple of green examples in the middle, a dark green one nearer to us, and a very smart pale green one just a little further along. What a great lineup of classic Fiats we've got there. This was at Silverstone, if memory serves. Carrying on with these green cars, we've got a fantastic Bond NRN 897. That particular Bond three-wheeler dates to 1960. This was photographed near Whitchurch in Shropshire. Clearly a bit of charity work going on there in this particular example a few years ago. Northwich Rotary Club. Now we're over to Oswestry in North Wales and a 1950s Wolseley painted green. Now, which model are we looking at here? Is it the 444 or the very similar looking 1550? I'm not quite sure, and there may be a detail difference, but I don't know what it is if there is one. Let me know in the comments if you know, please. Now here's a little Bobby Dazzler JNP 590C. That's a 1965 registered Albion coach. What a beauty that is. I absolutely love that. It looks almost older than its registration, but yeah, it's a great little vehicle, that is. Next up, this was at an evening classic car meet in 2022, a Lotus Elan Plus 2 drophead. Very nice it is too. If you've been around the channel any length of time, you'll know that I did a yellow cars collection and a brown and beige car collection video, and that seemed to go down quite well, so this time I thought we'd go green. And here, ACM 195D, a 1966 split window VW camper. What a great looking vehicle that is. I do like those roof racks, all polished aluminium and wooden slats. That looks fantastic, I do like that. Over to Woodford and one of their classic car meetings just a few years ago. UPF 405, a Jaguar XK120 drophead coupe in a lovely light metallic-y almost green. Almost an Aston Martin colour, that one. This one's been off the road for quite a few years, judging by the registration. Now, C954YPR, we've got a Morgan here, slightly wider wheels. That C-Reg puts the car as about 1985. Visually, Morgans haven't changed much over the years, so this is a mid-1980s example finished in green. We've got a green midget in the background there as well, or is it a Sprite? One of the two. Needing a little TLC is this fiberglass-bodied Turner 74LLG. There's a registration of that. That's a Cheshire registration, so not too unlocal from us. March 1960 is the date this particular car was put on the road, but has it been restored? Has it been rescued? Do you know where that Turner is now? And back to Woodford, their classic car meet. This was at the Avro Heritage Museum. HDM 949 is, of course, a Jowett Jupiter. This is an April 1952 car. It's got a standard 1.5 litre boxer engine under that lift-up front end. Great little car that is. White wall tyres as well, very stateside looking. Over to Capesthorne Hall Classic Car Show, and a side-on view of a very smart Morris-based pickup. The Morris Minor pickup, probably a 600 weight I would have thought. Very nice pale green this one, and it has the correct commercial bonnet with no strips down the side. The saloons have a beading that runs down the side of the bonnet, but the commercials do not. Also at Woodford is HXJ 458. That's a 1947 MGTC. If you are interested in these MGs, check out the thread that's running on the Old Classic Car Forum, my forum, because there is an incredible rebuild story undergoing on there at the moment. It's just an incredible job. Okay, bit of bus goodness now. We've got a Bristol low decker. Very nice it is too. This one was registered in May 1957 low decker because they had a lower roof height than many of the contemporary buses. They had a sunken floor upstairs. which meant that they could get under certain bridges. Now, EHJ 480H, I had to look this one up. It's a 1970 Chrysler of Australia, Chrysler Valiant VF series car, a two-door saloon. That's also at Woodford. They regularly hold classic car shows over there, so that's well worth checking out. Lots of old aeroplanes and cars as well. LAS 513 now. It's a Triumph TR3A, finished in a nice dark shade of green there. You can always tell the 3 from the 3A. This one, the 3A has a slightly wider grille and it has exterior door handles. The 3 does not. Okay, 692 JBP. This is a nice one. 1929 Chevrolet. It's an AC series car. This particular four-door sedan from 1929. Carrying on with these vintage and classic green cars, we got a bit of rally action on the Tour of Cheshire a few years ago, and a K-registered Volvo 144 saloon seen here at lurid angle there, competing on one of the tests as part of that year's Tour of Cheshire. Now here's a beauty. This was at a New Year's Day meet quite a few years ago now. It lives locally. This an AC Seeker, finished in a very, very dark shade of green with matching painted wires. A proper 1950s gentleman's GT, that would have been described as, and it's an absolutely stunning car. Lovely, lovely car. Slightly older is DMV 516, a two-seat Austin 7 Tourer finished in green. This car was registered in May of 1936, so it's quite a late chrome rad car, not long before the Ruby came along. Over to Capesthorne Hall again, classic car show, and showing off its huge load bay is this very special Rover P6, bodied by FLM Panelcraft. Apparently that is a Crayford design, that estate car body, called the Astoria. But yeah, what a practical car that is. Quite a plunging roofline, so it does compromise it slightly. Now this was a New Year's Day meeting quite a long time ago. 471 UXM is a Volvo Sugger. That's a radio command car, a Volvo-based vehicle from 1957. Over to Silverstone, and this was in the pits area. Go 54 is a 1931 Talbot 105. Very smart it is too. Let me know in the comments if you're a fan of green cars. Not everyone likes them. Some people think green cars, the colour can be unlucky. I know my uncle wrote off a Mark II Spitfire in the 60s, so it wasn't very lucky for him. Now, Bicester Heritage. If you saw the video that Harley and I did at Bicester in January of 2023, you'll remember seeing this F-registered Austin-based van. Very original looking van, great, very useful, practical vehicle, that one. Also at Bicester is TNB 481J, one of the pagoda-roofed Mercedes SLs. This is a left-hand drive car, presumably coming from the States, slightly different front lamps. You've got the repeaters on the front and rear wings as well. Nice car. Carrying on with these green cars, we're over to Alton Park now in the paddock area quite a few years ago now. We've got one of those Auto Union 1000s, the DKW. These were built from 1958 through to 1963, but you don't often see, or indeed hear, a racing example. So that's quite a rare sight. Is it still on track? Is it still around? Has it survived? Who knows? Back to Woodford, and a KYL 88D is a 1966 ex-HM Coast Guard Land Rover Series 1. That's a proper bit of kit. I love old faded paint, especially on Land Rovers. Somehow being repainted just doesn't seem to look the same, but old faded paint on something like that, fantastic. And very, very shiny is a G-registered Rover Maestro. This is an Advantage limited edition, and this year, 2023, it's the 40th anniversary of the Maestro, and there have been various gatherings and more planned for the rest of the year to celebrate that fact. Back to Silverstone, and in the pit lane area, we've got 3729 UM. This is a recreation of the old Project Aston Martin DB214. Car dates to 1961. And a very sleek bit of kit it is as well. This was designed with sports car racing, Le Mans and so on in mind. This was on the VSCC Cheshire Rally in 2021. UC2467, a 4.5 litre Bentley, registered January of 1928. And there is a TR3A behind it, also green. Many, many green cars. Okay, not just cars in this video, but here we have a glorious Foden lorry. I'm not quite sure of the age of this one, I'm guessing early 1950s. Lovely curved cab on this and a very distinctive Foden grille. What a beautiful example that is. English Steel Corporation, the Vickers Works, Sheffield. Back to Coupes and a two-tone green this time. UCA 87D, 1966 Hillman Super Minx. Oulton Park and a bit of saloon car racing action here, or rather post-racing action. A slightly mangled Jaguar Mark 1 3.4 race car. No doubt that was straightened out very soon after, and I'm sure it's still out and about racing somewhere. You can see the louvered bonnet, lovely triple SUs on the engine there. Beautiful car that is. As is this road-going Triumph. This is a Triumph Spitfire 4 Mark II on an E-plate, so that's early 1967. Very similar looking to the Mark I, the Spitfire 4, as it was called, although they had lower door handles. That's the giveaway from the side. Back over to Woodford, and an N registered, so late 1974 or early 1975 Jaguar XJ6. I think this was a 4.2 litre car. It's a Series 2, so it's got the chrome bumpers, but the raised bumper height at the front compared to the earlier Series 1. Still got the Series 1's low roof line on the 2. Now, BF7019, Harley likes this one a lot. It's a Ford Model A, seen at a VSCC, Vintage Sports Car Club. New Year's Day meet this was, but yeah, lovely looking car that is. So practical. So many of these you see in trials and so on. Off-road trialing, other competitive events. Great car. Close up now of a Mini Cooper S. Front wheels spinning away wildly. The rear's just about to start moving if you look at there. The fronts are definitely spinning away on the shiny asphalt on a classic car rally quite a few years ago now. You can see the trip meter on the dashboard as well. Here's an interesting one, a COE, Chevrolet COE, or cab over engine. This one's actually registered 1938, although I've got a feeling it's a little bit later than that, about 41 to 46, I think, is the correct era for this particular style of cab. But what a cracking looking vehicle, that you must get a fantastic view from up there. Now, over to Prescott, the Hillclimb venue, and 348 YUP. That is a very special Zagato-bodied Bristol, finished in mid-green. It's based on the 406, it's a 1959. The 406 Bristol was the last of the six-cylinder Bristols before the 407 came in and introduced the V8 engine. Now, back to Bicester in January 2023. If you've not seen that video yet, please check it out. We've got a trio of wonderful green-coloured woodies here. Rolls-Royce on the left, a Bentley in the middle, and a stunning V8 Ford in the foreground there, just on the right. What a Bobby Dazzler that is. Okay, a bit of a classic car run here. We've got a trio of Triumph Stags, and in the foreground we have a 1973 Stag finished in green with Mini-Lite style wheels on it as well. Beautifully polished, really well turned out example, as are all the three cars actually. Beautiful looking cars, lovely sound as well, that 3 litre V8. Back to Capesthorne, a very, very sunny day at Capesthorne Hall, and we have a K-registered 1971 Ford Escort Mexico Mark I. Beautiful green colour there with a black contrasting stripe over the roof and down the side. Carrying on with these green cars, over to Oulton Park, we've got the Tour of Cheshire, one of the rally stages passed through Oulton Park, and we've got a green MGB GT from 1966. Over to Oulton Park, and taking part in the MG Car Club Trophy Championship a few years back, we have this hatchback MG ZR 170. A whole gaggle of them were there in the pit lane. I remember walking around, and everywhere you looked there were MG ZRs. Okay, next up, BVW 523. This is a Riley special. It was registered in 1935, 1479cc. That makes it a Riley 12.4 base special. Very sporty little car. This, I had a ride in this one a few years ago. It went very well indeed. Okay, next up in this collection of green cars, we have a 1967 Fiat 850 Sport Spider. This is a very rare sight here in the UK. It's a left-hand drive car, so presumably imported from somewhere. Were these ever sold here? I mean, this is the only one I think I've ever seen here, so if they were sold here, it must have been in very small numbers indeed. Here's an interesting one. This is a Mustang, not a Mustang that you normally see. This is a Mustang Grande. This was a luxury version, a hardtop only luxury version of the Mustang. These were built from 1967 through to 73 apparently. Quite a rare sight now as a softer, more luxurious version of the usual Mustang. Okay, near Llangollen, we were on the steam railway, and as we got off at one end of the trip, the furthest end of the trip, we spotted this Series 1 Land Rover parked up and looking very, very nice indeed. Short wheelbase example, great, lovely old Landy from the early to mid 1950s in the usual typical green colour. Also in green, we have this gorgeous Lancia. This was at Prescott. HMV 700 is a Lancia Aprilia. This was built in 1938. So just a year or so before the outbreak of the Second World War. Very advanced little car for the time. Beautiful looking vehicle indeed, as is this Comma 774 FXW, and it's a Comma Bluebird according to that information board in the windscreen there. 1963 is the date. And it's painted green. I assume it would have been blue at one time when it was new, but yeah, green and very nice too. What a gorgeous vehicle this is. A 1941 Buick. And if you sort of squint, you could almost imagine yourself back in America in the 1950s, given the vehicles in the background there. There's my old little Dodge number 1, 1924 Tourer, just in the background there. And what a great vehicle that Buick was. Here's LMB 50G. This was my 122S. I in fact owned this twice. I bought it unrestored, ran it for a while, sold it to a friend, he crashed it, someone else bought it, restored it, and then I saw it at Tatton Park and I bought it back again. There it is there, over near Malpas, next to a lovely old sign. I wonder if that's still there. Back to an evening pub meet here, and we have a very nice 1967 registered Replica, I believe, Ford GT40, showing off its engine with the rear clamshell open. But yeah, what a bit of kit that is. Perfect for an evening drive, I would imagine. Still green, and we have a 1969 Jaguar XJ6 Series 1. We saw a Series 2 earlier on with a higher front bumper that I mentioned, but this is the predecessor, the Series 1. Gorgeous car, lovely car. This is a short wheelbase XJ. They also introduced the long wheelbase version for a bit more room in the back. Okay, now to a Welsh barn and a very dusty, slightly crusty but not beyond hope Morris Minor Traveller. This one's on a G-plate, so about 1968 or early 1969 is the year of this particular example. I wonder if it's gone on to be restored. Now to be in here somewhere, there's the Jolly Green Giant, or Big Dodge as it's sometimes called, the big green old Dodge. That one was 1940. I've had this since 1995, but it started out life with the RAF, and it was used on the bomber bases as an aircrew bus before living a new life after World War II. This is an interesting little one. I've seen this 2 or 3 times over the years, over the last 20 years or so, an Astra Utility. A very small little lightweight van of the 1950s, really bonny little vehicle. I've not seen it for a while, so where is it now? I assume it's still around. It's on a reissued number there, but when I first saw it, it still had its original registration. But someone had taken it off. 980 DA is next, a cracking little 3-wheeler Barclay. This one, I checked this one, February 1960 was the month and year that this particular 3-wheel car was put on the road. A lovely assortment of badges on the front there, but yeah, a great little car. Must be a lot of fun to drive that. Back to Silverstone, and we have a glorious Lamborghini Miura. What an eye-catching vehicle that is. In the background, a trio, also perhaps dark green looking at them, a trio of Morgans. Quite an early flat rad car on the right, and 2 of the more traditionally styled cars on the left. Another evening VSEC pub meet, and this lives locally to us and is in use most days apparently. A lovely little Austin 7 Ruby of about 1937 or something like that. But yeah, it's a lovely car. It's been in long-term ownership, runs sweet as a nut, this one, and it's, like I say, it's used regularly, and we quite often see it bimbling around town. Now, this was down at Malvern at a classic car auction a long time ago, GUK 912, a Jowett Javelin, and that's a 1949 car. A quick check online shows it as black. Now either the colour hasn't been kept up to date or it's changed colour since this photo was taken, but here, very obviously, it was metallic green. Back to Coupes, and we have an F registered, so late 1967 or early 68 Jaguar S-Type. This was an evolution really of the Mark II Jaguar, but most importantly of all, it had Jaguar's independent rear suspension on it, as opposed to the non-independent back end on the Mark I and the Mark II. Now looking a little forlorn is this very pale green Ford Pop 103E. I wonder if this one went on to be rescued. It was looking pretty sorry for itself when I saw this many years ago, probably at least 15 years ago. I took this photograph, slowly being enveloped by the foliage, getting greener by the month, and very, very green too, is this Morris Minor van. Now this is one I haven't seen for a long time. It's got a sun visor, but most unusually, those rear wheel spats. I don't think I've ever seen a Morris Minor van with those spats. I've seen A40 vans, the early A40 Devon type vans had spats, but never a Moggy usually. Back over to Coupes, and a lovely little Citroen SM, the Maserati powered, about 2.7 litre V6 Maserati engine hiding away under that bonnet. Very advanced car, and probably quite tricky to keep them running now. Quite a complicated beast under that shapely bodywork. This was photographed over near Lichfield, if memory serves. A super rare Morris J2 pickup, 311 KBF. Very few survivors. You could probably count on the fingers of one hand. They are that rare, especially in this country. There are so few of these around now. There was the Austin 152, and that was the Morris J2. Thanks to Ellis for this photo, taken quite a few years ago in North Wales. 975 CVW is an 803cc powered Austin A30. You can tell it's the A30 because it's got the all chrome grille, and the gutter runs around the roof as opposed to dropping down the A-pillar. Now, back to Silverstone, and we've got a glorious Triumph TR5 PI for fuel injection. That was the same engine that went into the TR6 that came along later. 2.5 litre straight six engine, glorious sound and go, very, very nicely indeed. That's a beautiful car, a very dark green. Slightly lighter green here is a 1972 Ford Cortina Mark III GXL. All over metallic green, apart from that black vinyl roof. Twin headlamps, this was one of the posh ones. But yeah, great car, great colour too. This was at Alton Park, I think. Years ago we went to Bruntingthorpe to have a look at all the old aeroplanes that are stored there. And while we were there we spotted this Bedford. I'm not quite sure what it is. Clearly it's got a tanker body on the back for something or other. But what all that is above the cab, pointing up into the air, I'm not quite sure, but it's green, so it's going to be in this video. Years and years ago we went to go and retrieve an old ice cream van. No, it wasn't an ice cream van, but this is an ice cream van, but we went to go and buy a milk float. And in the storage area was this glorious A40 ice cream van. It's since gone on to be restored. If you check the Aldridge Transport Museum video that I put on here a while back, you'll see that now. Okay, XSL 348 is an MGTD of the early 1950s. Over at Houghton Park, where the old preserved hangars are, the old World War I hangars are, which is where I did used to store Big Dodge actually, we saw this not so long ago, BXR 853. Wonderful 1935 Elvis. That's got a 2.8 litre engine and it's in fully restored condition. What a Bobby Dazzler. This dates to 1967 and it's a restoration project, Jaguar Mark II. I went with a friend of mine to help retrieve this a few years ago. It didn't go on to be restored with him. I think he moved it on sometime later. Has it been done? Has this car been restored yet? Let me know please, I'd be interested to know. A year or two back we found ourselves in Northwich in Cheshire and parked up with this very unusual looking Discovery. Clearly a bit of a camper conversion I think, but it's a great looking thing that is, but more importantly it's green, so it's going to be in this video. Nice two-tone green Sunbeam Talbot 90 here, YTV 500, glistening in the evening sun there. A gaggle of other classic cars around it. That's Dad's old VDP 1300, that maroon one just in front of it, and a friend's 2CV. Now this is the Yak VNC 101X. That's a interesting little car. This one was registered in December of 1981, and it hasn't been taxed since 1990. So that's a jolly long time this one's been off the road. This was on display in a museum in Manchester, which I believe, I'm not sure if it's still there actually. Anyway, over to Llangollen now in North Wales. You can see clearly that this was at the Llangollen Motor Museum, a fine establishment, and it's a Robin van, Reliant Robin van. That's got to be a rare thing. Dates to about 1973, this one. Back to another VSCC New Year's Day meet, GJ5890, a lovely 2-litre speed model of the Lagonda. Not sure about the fog lights on the front, but glorious looking car, and I do like those curved running boards as well. I think that's a very neat touch, but yeah, stunning quality car of the 1930s. Years and years ago, I went with a friend to go and have a look at this. He didn't end up buying it, but it's a bit of a garage find Mustang Mach-1 on a K-plate, but importantly, it's green with white stripes. K-plate puts it as probably about late 1971 or thereabouts in date. I wonder where that is now. Now here's another one which I'm a bit curious about. YDG 900, the Riley 1.5 of course, but I looked that registration up and it doesn't show on DVLA, but you can't imagine this has disappeared by now. This was at Bicester only about 5 or 6 years ago, so surely the car's still around somewhere unless it was written off or something. If you know what's happened to that Riley, let me know. Now this is one of my old Merc estates, one of the 124 series estates. This E280 is a facelift car, the E280. M780XVE was the registration. It's still on DVLA, but it hasn't been taxed in 2011, so it's either stashed away somewhere or it was scrapped and DVLA not notified. Anyway, back to older cars, and this was last year at Alton Park, a much modified dark green MGB Roadster. I'm guessing there's a V8 hiding under that particular bonnet, but yeah, very purposeful looking car indeed. I quite like that. Still plenty of green cars to go. Back down to Prescott, and wow, now this is a very special car. This is a 1925 Voisin, a C5 faux cabriolet, or fake cabriolet I suppose. So it looks like it's got a folding roof, but it hasn't. But yeah, what a magnificent car that is. And also magnificent, of course, is this Standard 8 back at Llangollen Motor Museum. This was parked outside, up for sale. It says in the window there, 578 UYR. It's a fairly early 8, but it's got the slidey door windows front and rear, whereas ours has got the modern accoutrements of wind-up windows, but back then it was slidey. Now, to Crewe Heritage Centre, and we haven't seen this one for a few years. Is it still in the area, I wonder? This is a late 1930s Hillman Minx. It's a Hillman Minx Magnificent, dating to 1936, according to that very useful information board there. I wish everyone would put information boards in front of their cars. This is a gentleman locally has a huge collection of old coaches like this. And this Bobby Dazzler, this Dennis, dates to 1929. This was registered in October of that year. And what a glorious little vehicle that is. Absolutely lovely. Back to Llangollen, an LJH211 is an early 1950s AC 2-litre. AC, of course, better known perhaps for the Cobra and to a lesser extent perhaps the Aseca, which we've already seen, but this was the AC 2-litre. You don't see too many of these now. And this is a Bedford CA, of course. This is the CAL for the longer wheelbase. The CAS was the short wheelbase, and this is the Mark III because it's got the one-piece screen and it's much taller screen compared to the Mark II, which introduced the one-piece windscreen. So this is a Mark III CAL. Okay, back to Capesthorne, BLC 118. This is the Austin 10-4 Litchfield. This was the updated version, if you like, of the 32 to 34 Austin 10, which had the chrome radiator, and they were sort of modernised a little bit with this painted radiator surround, but the main body and everything else was pretty much the same as the older car. Now this is a special little herald. I photographed this at least 20 years ago in Winsford in Cheshire. And at the time it was a one-owner car, beautifully original. Apparently it's still on the road, it still shows as being taxed and so on. Dates to 1970, but it was a lovely unrestored car when I saw it. Is it still unrestored or has it been done? Let me know, please. Now, slightly newer, but also green, is this Peugeot 309 GTI Goodwood Edition. This is quite a rare special edition version of the Peugeot 309, a car that you don't see all that often. This one dates to about 1992, so getting on a bit now. Back to the 1950s, and we've got a side-on view now of the good old Ford Pop 103E. This was sort of the slightly later version of my E4948 Anglia, but it had the slightly larger engine, the 1172, as opposed to my 933, and a slightly plainer dashboard, smaller headlamps, but otherwise very similar. Now back to Bicester, January 2023, and that is where we spotted this wonderful 1974 Mercedes S-Class. I do think these are nice. This has got the 2.8 litre engine under the bonnet, registered February of 1975. And if you've not seen the Bicester video yet, please check that one out, the Sunday Scramble, because that was a great event. Now, thanks to Ellis again for this photo. A few years ago in North Wales, LPD 287, a Rover Sports Saloon. It's a Rover 12 Sports Saloon. The Sports Saloon has a lower roof line and just 2 windows on the side. So it's a 4 lights. The standard P2 has a high roof line and 3 windows per side. Back to Bicester, TX8033 is a vintage Lee Francis Tourer. We don't get too many Lee Francises on the channel, so I thought I would definitely have to include this nice dark green example just to try and raise the profile of this sort of almost forgotten mark, British maker of course. Now a TVR, there's a collection of TVR photographs already on the channel, and I think this car is in there, a J-plate, one of the S-series TVRs. Very nice car too, V6 power. This is an unusual one. 1966 is the year, and it is a Comma Imp van. No longer will they called the Comma Cobs. This is the Comma Imp. Still rear engine, still with the engine under the back there, so it must compromise the load bay, the load floor height in the back. But yeah, Imp-based van. Okay, this on an L plate is a very smart BRG, or British Racing Green, MGB Roadster of course, with chrome wire wheels. Alongside it, an Austin Champ. Down to the Prescott Hillclimb again, always lots of BRG and dark green and light green cars there. SAD 725, it looks like a slightly modified XK140 fixed head coupe. It's got a leather bonnet strap and extra cooling louvers in the bonnet there, so clearly there have been some modifications with this particular Jaguar. And looking very, very purposeful. I photographed this at Silverstone a few years ago. A Sunbeam Tiger. The registration is ADU179B if you want to look at the history of this car. Le Mans Coupe from 1964. But that looks and sounds fantastic. Look at the size of the wheels and tyres on the back. At La Vie en Bleu, which is an event that used to be held at Prescott, I saw this Panhard. This 1964 Panhard is a 24CT. That's the model name. Really interesting car. Some of these French cars are just wild. Look at the wipers, the clap hand wipers. That reminds me a bit of some of the early Morris Minors. Another evening classic car meets. We get to quite a few of those sort of gatherings. This is a 1966 Hillman Imp Saloon. We've had the van already, but that looks great on those slightly wider steel wheels. It all looks very purposeful and in beautiful condition. Really nicely turned out car. Absolutely stunning thing. As is this, an MGA. That's a nice little roadster there, showing off its B-series engine. Got a big radiator there, and not so easy to work on those carburetors, I bet, looking at that photograph, but it's nice to see a few under-bonnet photographs. If you like engine views, let me know, and I'll see if I can do a compilation of those. Now, good old slice of 1950s British motoring here. This old Morris Oxford, I think it's a Series 3, I think. And this particular car, this two-tone green car, dates to 1958. On a chilly day, there was this gentleman who was photographed driving along in his E-Type. It's a Series 3 V12 E-Type Roadster. Now, whether it's an automatic or a manual, I'm not quite sure. Most of them, I think, were autos, but there were a few manuals around. This is quite a late one on the 74, early 1975. Very smart it is too, but look at this pre-war gem, a lovely coupe. The registration is DS8319, and the car is a Buick, a Series 26 Buick coupe from 1930. Beautiful green with lighter green pinstriping as well, green wheels too. What a bit of kit that is. As is this, a green with yellow flash Lotus Cortina Mark 1, seen on a trail at Alton Park, one of the Gold Cup meetings I think this was, a long, long time ago. Oh, there's my Let Lost in 7 special. I retrieved this years and years ago. It had been stashed away since 1959. Bit of everything going on there. It was an Austin 7 chassis, cut down Swallow radiator surround, a modified Ulster, original Ulster body tub. The engine was pretty much standard, but I'd love to know where that is now, actually. Okay, F432 RBH. That is an ERA Mini Turbo, complete with the original body kit on it. They had made, I don't think they made too many of those, a few hundred. Several colours were available. This one is obviously in a dark green. It's quite a rare Mini Cabriolet alongside, actually. Oof, look at this, 56 9P MT. That is a wartime era Humber staff car, complete with a green Jeep alongside, but much rarer is that glorious Humber, clearly based on a road-going car, but wider wings and huge wheels and tyres on it to cope with all sorts of conditions. Okay, back to Coupes Thorn. We've got a really nice Triumph TR4 here, a right-hand drive car, very nicely turned out indeed, in good company with an E-Type alongside and a Moggy Traveller behind. But yeah, the only green car there is the lovely little TR4. This was a meet in 2009 over near Macclesfield that I photographed this one, CTU 131N, 1974 Jensen Healey convertible. Evans D612YEV is a circa 1986 Trabant. It appears to be a military police Trabant. Now, whether that's a livery that's been applied in more recent years or if that's how it started out life, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, the old two-stroke East German Trabant. This lovely little vehicle was spotted at Bicester Heritage a few years back. I think it's changed owners since this photo was taken. RSJ 195 is a Fordson 7V based catering vehicle. These were built either side of World War II. You could have a diesel engine or the good old flathead V8. That's a Silverstone, and we've got 97 here, DMH. That is a Jaguar, Mark 7 Jag of 1951, and it was originally sold to Germany. I think it was left-hand drive when it was originally sold to Germany, but it's clearly had a right-hand drive conversion in the intervening years. Lovely, lovely car. As is this, the two-tone, pale green and white Ford Anglia. Now, I assume it's a 105E, but if it's the deluxe, then I'm guessing technically it's the 123E. Is that correct? I think it is. Now, this was taken on New Year's Day 2023, and this glorious AC turn that we saw the Aseca before, but VP03 is an AC Ace. And it does have period competition history. If you bang that registration number into Google Images, you'll see photos of it racing at places such as Goodwood and so on. Lovely, lovely car. I was really taken with that. Next up, a Triumph Spitfire Mark IV. A P-registered car, 1975. That had the 1296cc engine, and then it will be replaced by the 1500. And in fact, I tell a lie, this is a Spitfire 1500, so it's the same shape as a Mark IV, but just a slightly enlarged version of the engine. Now, this was in the auction area at the Alton Park Gold Cup not that long ago, and this is a base model BMW 518. So it's the 1.8 litre 4-cylinder car and the E28 series, the 5 Series BMW of the 1980s. Very clean, crisp looking car. Next up, we have a left-hand drive Saab 99 two-door saloon, the 99L. 99s are perhaps best remembered for the turbo models that came along in the late 1970s, about 1977 onwards, but the vast majority of the cars sold were of course the non-turbocharged cars. Here we are in North Wales at the classic car show that we went to in 2022. There is a separate video up for that of course on the channel. We've got this really nice mid-green Morris Minor 1000 Traveller on an F plate, so late 1967 or early 1968. Cop 152E, that particular Porsche dates to 1967 and it's the 912. It's a left-hand drive Porsche 912. Staying with Germany for a while, and this was a New Year's Day meet years and years ago. It's on an S plate, this particular Mercedes, 1977, and it's one of the 123 series cars. There are various different engine sizes offered. This is probably a mid-range to upper range one. It's got the headlamp wipers, which I don't think all versions had, but a very nice car indeed. As is this, the Elva. This is an Elva racing car, seen at one of the race meets held at Alton Park a few years ago. NPM 620. There's the registration, and there's a Triumph TR4 behind it. Next up in this collection of green cars, we are back down to Bicester Heritage. There's my youthful assistant there doing a bit of filming for his car traction channel. And in the foreground we have an F-registered Riley Elf, the booted Mini, just like the Wolseley Hornet, but this is the Riley version. And alongside it a lovely Jensen 541. Back to that classic car show in North Wales that I mentioned a few moments ago with that Moggy Traveller. Here we've got JYH71K, a Zagato-bodied Lancia Fulvia. Quite an eye-catching coupe based on the Lancia Fulvia. I'm still not quite sure which one I prefer, the factory car or the Zagato version. I think I probably prefer the factory Lancia. Now, 613 HWP is a Ford Thames 307E, the Ford Anglia era of Thames van. Very nice it is too, this particular example, and a period rival alongside, albeit slightly older, is that split-screen Morris Minor van. Okay, back to Bicester, we've got a Jaguar XKSS here. I'm assuming this is one of the sort of later build continuation cars or recreations, but the XKSS was basically a road-going version of the D-type racing car, made slightly more civilised by having a little folding roof, and that's about it really. Okay, WSL 432, an Austin Healey 104, and this particular car, finished in green, seen at Alton Park, was built in 1954. This one here, we have a Triumph. This is a Triumph Roadster of the early 1950s, I think this probably is, maybe late 40s, early 1950s. And it has two seats in the front, and it has the lift-up dicky seat in the back, complete with a separate windscreen just for the rear seat passengers, which you can see raised there. Quite an interesting thing. Now, YHM 420G, which is a very appropriate registration on a Jaguar 420G. The 420G was basically the slightly revised 4.2 litre version of the older 3.8 litre Mark 10. Otherwise very, very similar, with just the strip down the side is one of the few giveaways. And we're looking at the later car. Now here's a side-on view of a Mini 95 pickup in green. Unlike the saloons, which went to concealed door hinges and wind-up windows, the commercial Minis, the vans and the pickups, they stuck with the exterior hinges and the slidey door windows. I wonder why they didn't bother updating it. Okay, VJ6746, back to pre-war cars for a moment. This is a standard 9 or a little 9, a two-door saloon. You could also get the four-door version as well, but this is a little two-door car, seen many years ago. I think this was at Malvern possibly, certainly quite a few years back now. Carrying on with these green cars, here's a really practical bit of kit, an early 1970s Vauxhall Victor FE Estate with its tailgate raised there. Quite a large load bay in those. The roof line does drop down a little bit, so it does compromise practicality a little bit, but quite a sleek looking estate car of the 1970s. Over in the Alton Park paddock area, and we have a race prepared Austin Healey Sprite Mark 1, or the Frog Eye Sprite. White roof, but the rest of it's green. And there you can see the rear hinged bonnet and the access to its A-series engine. Still quite a few green cars to go. And here we have 23 NMP, which of course is a VW Beetle. This one dates to 1952 and it's first used by the British forces in Germany. Apparently it's a standard model Beetle, so there's no luxuries or deluxe items on this particular car, painted over chrome, no bright work on that car. Now to 1966, and we have a very smart green Humber Scepter. This of course was like an updated, posher version of the Hillman Super Minx. Of course you had the Singer Vogue as well, which was very similar too. Now this is very nice, 749 FBC, an Alvis TD21 fixed head coupe. Very nice indeed too. The earlier cars had steel clad doors, the they were clad in, so obviously it's got a wooden frame inside, but the doors tended to sag on the early TDs, so they went to alloy skinning after a while. Okay, now JDM 961, this is one I do like a lot, an Austin A40 pickup. I used to run one of those for a brief time, but yeah, these are lovely little vehicles. These are such characterful little pickup trucks dating to the early 1950s. We all know what these two are. Of course, it's a Citroen 2CV, the one nearest the camera, in a very jolly shade of green, a bamboo limited edition, it says. That's not one I remember. I remember some of the others, like the Charleston and so on, but I don't remember the bamboo, but I'm guessing it was a thing. Very nice it is too. Back to Alton Park, and we have an H-registered MG midget racing car here with a light green hardtop and a dark green coachwork. Is this one still around? This was photographed quite a long time ago at it's possibly one of the MG Car Club meetings. Oh, another Volvo Amazon in a very dark green. Like I said, I had that 122S that I showed a little bit earlier, and this was a slightly pepped up version. This is the 123 GT. So similar to the 122S, but just a bit more grunt, and it had a separate tacho screwed to the top of the dashboard, if I remember correctly. Really nice example, this one, seen quite recently. Now, down at Shelsley Walsh in 2005, I photographed this Morris race car transporter recreation. This was a recreation of the BMC competition department race support truck. A great bit of kit this is. It's built from scratch and old photographs. That's the only thing the person who built this had to go from. Okay, back to Alton Park and the auction area. We've got a nice H-registered 1969 Jensen Interceptor. Very swish looking car indeed. Lovely metallic green colour. Just a few more green cars to go. Yeah, here we go. And this is an A40 Mark II Farina. Now it's got deluxe style bumper overriders, but the rear side windows are fixed. You can see the rubber surrounds, so they don't pop open, whereas normally they would do. So this is actually a base model A40. And it's actually quite a rare thing, that is, because most of them seem to be deluxes. Also, Alton Park, which is where that A40 was photographed, we've got this LCV 522, a mighty Daimler DB18, a 6-light saloon, so 3 windows down either side. And this particular machine dates to 1949, a lovely mid-green colour, suicide rear-hinged front doors on these particular cars. And at the same venue, but many, many years before, we've got this circa 1977 Alfa Romeo GTV in a fairly lurid 1970s shade of green, complete with stripe. Almost there. Thank you very much for sticking with this video of green cars. And also Alton Park, but much more recently, 2022, is this circa 1969 Pontiac GTO with one of its headlamps showing and the other one hidden behind the cover. I'm not sure if that's just demonstrating how the headlamps are covered up when they're not switched on. I'm not quite sure, but that's on a G plate, so 1969. Finishing off this collection of very, very green cars is this very, very bright green Lotus Europa. That concludes this look at classic green cars from over the years. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that was of interest. Please have a look around the rest of the channel before you're finished here. There are so many videos about classic cars, vintage cars, museums, show visits and so on. So I'm sure there'll be something else which will be of interest to you. Thank you very much for watching. More videos along very, very soon. So bye for now.